Hello, we are live. It is a beautiful day here in Virginia. So good morning to everyone who is tuning in. Thank you guys so much. As always, before we get started, just make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the video. That really helps me out. So that way you guys get updated on when all the YouTube live classes are. And then if you would like to support the channel, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. I have a link in the comment section if that's something that you are interested in. And also you can always, don't forget to smash that thumbs up button. Really helps me out a lot. So also, if you have any questions at any point in time in the video, please write them in the comment section so I can answer them in the video. So today is our last day of the mount position for our BJJ Fundamentals. We're going to warm up a little bit first to make sure we're getting our body moving, because I know everyone's sitting a lot more than usual. And then once we get into that, we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to start doing some standing self-defense, mostly solo drills, then do some partner drills with my partner, bear drills, and then we'll be finishing up with the collar choke from mount today with some details, and then I'll open it up for questions and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and start with some squats and stuff. So we're just going to go ahead and get started with some stretches. I'm going to open up the video a little bit so everyone can see. So we're going to go ahead and start with our squat. So make sure, remember, we're going to make our knees point towards our pinky toes, sink into the bottom, elbows between the knees, okay, and just kind of hang out here. Make sure your heels are on the ground, okay, and then if you want, you can kind of lean in to each foot, kind of work through that ankle flexion, kind of work on that ankle mobility a little bit. Just starting out and warming up those hips, okay. Now we're going to stand back up. Now we're going to be doing kind of a combination lunge. So we're going to lunge to the side first, as deep as you can to kind of warm up. And then once we lunge to the side, we're going to keep our foot planted and we're going to step backwards here, lunge. So it's going to be 1 and then back, 1 to the side, and then back. We're just trying to warm up a little bit. And it doesn't have to be super deep, just kind of warming up the body before we get started. I have my windows open today. It's extra warm. Feels good. It's 80 degrees here in Virginia. I'm pretty stoked. Excellent. So once you do that side, we're going to go to the other side now. So what we're looking for is we're going to step, lunge, keep our foot planted, step back, open up to the other side. Step, open up, step, open up, step, open up, open up. So now our legs are kind of warm a little bit. We're going to be working into our lateral transition. So I'm going to turn towards the ground so we're going to see what my footwork is. So when I do our lateral transition, we're going to start with our feet together. We're going to step. And when I step, instead of going straight into a lunge, we're going to bend and then go to the other side. So step, other side. So we're trying to make it as smooth as possible. We're going to do about 5 each side. Okay, now we're going to do our lateral transition to the side. So we're going to start here. Then when we step, we're going to step to the side, lateral transition. Then step back to the top. So basically what we're doing is we're kind of simulating that T position. So stepping to the side, lateral transition, lateral back. Lateral transition to the side, lateral back. Lateral transition to the side, lateral back. Last 2. Good job. Now we're going to get back, now that we're pretty warm, we're going to get back into our squat stretch. Use our elbows to push our knees out. Now we should have our heart rate elevated slightly, not too high. Get a little deeper into that stretch. Now we're just going to go ahead sit to our butt. Get our break hold. Now we're going to warm up our spine with some rocking. So when we're doing our rocking, we're trying to engage the core. We're going to hold our knees, tuck our chin to our chest. So we're going to rock back, engage the core to help come back to the top, and then we're going to balance at the top. So do this about 10 times. 1. Okay, once we're done in the balance, we're going to go ahead and move in just to a regular child's pose. Set our hips back, and then you're going to stretch our arms up. Should feel pretty good. Now we're going to push our hips forward, then open up into our up dog. Now stretch through our abs a little bit. We're going to slide our knee up, look over, drop our hip, and look over our back shoulder. So I use this to do a lot of openers because Jiu-Jitsu is a lot of crunching, so we want to move in that opposite direction. So switch, move the other leg up, drop our hip down, and look behind us. Now push back, child's pose again. Now we're going to walk our hands to the side. You can stack your other hand on top of your other hand, and now we're going to sink our hips back and kind of breathe through our ribs to really stretch our lats out. Okay. Other side. Walking our hands to the side. Stack our hands on top of each other and really sink into this opposite hip, and then breathe through your ribs. Okay, back to the center. Now we're going to go ahead and move forward again. Up dog. Now what I want you to do is, now we're going to bring our legs up. Now when we bring our legs up, kind of almost like this little seal stretch, we're going to drop our hips or feet, toes from one side to the other side. So this is trying to work our hips into a full range of motion. Then when we push back, we're going to push back in kind of a wide child's pose. So our knees are going to be a little wider now, kind of really stretching through your hip flexor and groin. Through here. Now we're going to push forward. Touch, and then touch. Almost like we're making hooks in that mount position. Touch, touch, push back. Nice wide child's pose. Really kind of sink into those hips. Come forward. Touch, 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 touch. Last time, push back. Okay, sit through. We're going to shield real quick. Now we're going to take a big step up. Now we're going to move into our footwork. So just a quick reminder for everybody, when we're doing our footwork, I'm sorry if you can't see my head, it's really important that you see my feet instead. We're going to get into what we call our fighting stance or making base position. So we always want to make base in Jiu-Jitsu. So the way I remember it is, we're going to have my feet together. 1, 2, 3 and a half. So my feet are always on train tracks and never on a tight rope because then I don't have base. My front foot is pointed at my target. My back foot is at a 45. Now typically in grappling, you put your strong foot forward. I put my my left foot forward. That's just for me because I have the same stance for everything, even when I fight. My hands are going to be kind of this kind of neutral position because this means like I don't want to fight. This kind of means a little more aggressive. So what we're going to be working on first, after getting our hit, is a step and slide footwork. So we're going to step, slide, step, slide, step, slide, and step, slide. So we're making like a plus sign here. What we're trying to really get is that my back foot always comes to the party. And I'm always maintaining my stance no matter what direction I go. So I want you to be able to set a dollar bill underneath my heels at any time. You don't want to be heel heavy because then you lose your balance. Okay, so hands up, step, slide, step slide, step slide, step slide. So I'm building a box. Staying in my stance the whole time. Okay, once we get comfortable with the step and slide, you can turn it into a shuffle, where I push off of the leg, shuffle, 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 shuffle. So I'm going to bend my legs a little bit, kind of use them as a spring, not to jump up, but to kind of push off. Push, 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 push. What you don't want is like, I don't know what that is. It's not fighting. So shuffle, 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 and shuffle. Okay, so our step and slide is to kind of the precursor to make that connection to the ground till we get to our shuffle. Because when we decide to enter, we want to enter hard. So let's talk about that a little bit. So when you're doing, no matter how much jiu-jitsu you know, it does not matter even if you have takedowns, because the hardest part is to go from like kicking, punching range, standing range, all the way into standing range without taking a large amount of damage. And because now, everyone watches the UFC. It's not like 1993 where no one had ever even seen grappling before. So people are a lot more educated now, even if you're just a random person on the street. So what we're really going to talk about today is that lunging punch. The person is like, I don't like your face. You looked at my girlfriend wrong. And they step in and take a big swing at your head. I almost never see anyone on the street throw straight punches. Amateur boxers throw straight punches. So if you fight one of those, I'm sorry. Try not to fight amateur boxers. But most people who think they know how to fight will step in and throw that big kind of sucker punch or big haymaker or big lunging punch, where they step in really hard, like they're loading up for it and they step in hard. So what we're going to be working on today is we're going to be working on an entry. Now, entry means is that I want to close the gap from this outside range to this inside range, kind of the standing clinch range. So what we want to be when we're talking about entries is 2 arms distance away from the bad guy. When we're 2 arms distance, the person cannot hit us and I can't hit them. So we're just outside of range. I don't want to be so far away that I can't enter, because then at that point you might as well just run away. But if I want to enter, I want to be just outside of range. Now, the idea behind this is if the person is coming at me hard and I step in hard, we're going to meet past each other. So that's the idea. So I don't have to do all of the work if the person is being aggressive. So this is what we call attack by drawing. So attack by drawing for my JKD guys is what we do is we're moving backwards, and when I see the person come in hard, that's when I go. Okay, so we want to overlap that a little bit. And we're going to do this what we'll call high elbow cover. So when you're doing a high elbow cover, I just want to be very clear so everyone can see what I'm doing with my face before you add the footwork, is when we're covering, this is not enough. This is not going to cover anything when we're talking about street self-defense. So it's very important that when we cover, we're holding the back of our head here. I want my shoulder to cover my jaw, and you'll see my elbow is actually covering my nose. This is very important. So I don't want anything to actually swing here either. You also want this to be tight. If this is loose at any point in time, you're going to get hit with your own arm and knock yourself out, which is very awkward. That's not going to look good on YouTube. So we want to make sure that this is all really tight, and then your other hand is up. It's not like posing. So you want to make sure your other hand is up so you're prepared to basically engage into the clinch. So it's here or here. And notice I'm always tucking my chin to make sure that it's supported by my shoulder, because this is the light switch. So I want to cover all the soft tissues of my face. If I get kind of glazed, kind of a glazing shot like here, it's not going to hurt me as much. So the idea is that I don't want to get hit at all. I just don't want to get hit with anything that can cause like damage that will take me out of the fight kind of indefinitely. That's what we're looking for, to avoid like quick knockouts, shattered noses, shattered eye sockets, things like that, knocking your teeth out of your face. Those are the things we want to avoid. Okay, debilitating shots that take you out of the fight, and once you get knocked out, you can't defend yourself. It's physically impossible. And so this is what I'm taking these entries very seriously for jiu-jitsu, because this is the reality of the world that we live in, is that it doesn't matter how much jiu-jitsu you know unless you can take the fight to where you are comfortable. And comfort is control. So the more comfort you have, if you're comfortable in the position, the more control you're going to have. So we have to make that happen. So we're going to talk about the entry a little bit. So we're going to combine this high elbow cover with our shuffle step and really stepping in hard. So the idea is when I do this entry, my elbow should actually hit my opponent in the chest or the pec. I use this a lot in like my Kali, my JKD, my Panatukan, but also my Thai. In Thai, we throw this as an elbow. We're not going to worry about that today. So let's go ahead and get started. So if I'm stepping into this direction here, and I know no one can see my hands, so I'm going to go ahead and tip this up slightly so everyone can see what I'm doing with my hands as well. Hopefully everyone can see everything. So what we're looking for here is that we're in our defensive stance, and I see the person step in hard. I want to shuffle in and take that big step. What I don't want to do is do this and just step in, because then I have this back foot in the bucket, and when this back foot's in the bucket, I can't engage the clinch quickly. I always want my feet underneath me. So my hands are up. I'm going to step in hard when they step in and cover. See, I'm covering really tight, and see how much distance I covered? Now I have the ability to move into that T position, okay? So that's what we're looking for, is that we're going to that shuffle step into that lateral transition into the clinch, regardless if it's the T position, the rear clinch, depending on what my opponent gives me. So my hands are up. I'm going to shuffle in hard, high elbow cover. Now I'm ready to move into that T position. Other side. So my hands are up. I'm going to shuffle hard. When I shuffle hard, I'm really covering my head. My other hand is up as well. That way I'm ready to grab or catch. That way I can move into the T position if I need to. But what you don't want to do is be reaching to try to engage the clinch. I think we talked about this last time with the P-cell, with the 93 kick. So it's very important that this actually physically hits the person. And it should be like impact. You should hit them hard. It's like a battering ram. We're going through the person. Because if we do it like a battering ram, you don't need to see where their arms are to engage the clinch, because you've made contact. You feel that you are deep enough. Then you can just grab stuff. Because once you connect to the spine, you know where the arms and legs are. They're not going to be somewhere else unless they have a horrible medical condition. So hands up. I'm going to step in hard. Here. Then we can move into the T position. So what I like about this is you don't need a partner to work on the footwork separately. I think as jiu-jitsu people, we kind of poo-poo the solo drill or the shadow grappling because we don't get that immediate feedback like we do typically in jiu-jitsu. But I think it's really important to have mastery of your own movement before you start doing moves on other people. So hands up, shuffle in hard. Now you see I didn't kind of, it was very soft landing. You can tell I've been doing striking for a while. So cover tight. Now we can grab and move into the T position. So this is a great way to kind of take the footwork we did in the warm-up and combine it in a realistic video. So this is referred to as a lunging punch defense from the T position. So this is what I would recommend, just drilling this entry on your own with the cover and getting comfortable with it. Another thing you can do is get in a mirror and just work on your cover, making sure it's tight. And that's a great way to kind of make sure your defense is very good. So it doesn't matter how good your offense is in jiu-jitsu if you can't defend yourself from getting hit. Because it only takes one. Anyone who watches MMA on the regular knows it doesn't take a lot to end a fight very quickly with a well-placed shot. So it's very important that you have your entries down so that way you can progress the fight. So I'm going to open up to questions now about the lunging punch defense or in general, or how we go from this striking range to our standing grappling range. If there are no questions, I'm going to move on into the mount position. But so far, this should be pretty straightforward. If you have a partner, that's great. Then you can have them kind of step in and kind of pretend to punch you or something, and then you can step in hard. But this is a great one to shadow box on your own for your lunging punch defense. So if there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and move into the mount position, and we're going to go ahead and start working with our partner drills. So we're going to be, this is our last class for mount. So I really wanted to finish kind of with mount maintenance and the collar choke, which I used to hate, but now the collar choke is actually one of my favorite submissions. And as long as you have a gi, you can practice it. So what we're going to be working on first is just our mount maintenance, and we're going to work on 3 ways to maintain the mount, and then I'll open it up for questions if people had specific questions as far as maintaining the mount, which anyone will tell you is the hardest thing to maintain position-wise, anyone who's been training for any length of time. So we're going to get my partner bear drills. He's an awesome partner. He lets me do whatever I want, which is great. So we're in our bear. So we're in our mount position. Just a quick review of everything we've done. So remember that stretch we did in the beginning where we put our hands on the mat, and then we're going to use that to push our hips back. This is kind of going to give you a little bit more control. So you want to think like just like the self-defense all the way up or all the way out or all the way in. Same thing in mount. I want to be all the way down, kind of all the way up. Those are like the two safest places to be. So when I'm here, I'm using my hands to push my hips up. Now, the first thing that most people try to do who don't know Jiu-Jitsu, okay, because there's two types of Jiu-Jitsu. I always tell you guys it's in every fundamental class. Jiu-Jitsu versus Jiu-Jitsu, and Jiu-Jitsu versus the uneducated opponent, or the unpredictable opponent, as Master Sauer would always tell me. So our first unpredictable opponent is someone who tries to bench press off of you. I know this because this happened to me a lot when I first started training. So when someone bench presses off of you, it's really important that you don't lean back. Because when you lean back, you give them the ability to go out that way. So what we want to do is we want to go forward. We want to go forward and kind of make our torso kind of heavier. It's going to hang on them like a wet towel. Now I'm going to turn my shoulders, and the shoulder that's back swims through first. So what it looks like now, bear drills is not a very active part of you, to forgive me. He does the best he can. So when someone pushes up and I don't want to lean back, I want to lean forward, make their arms heavy, kind of hang on them like a wet towel. Now I turn my shoulders, the arm that's back goes in first, and then swim through. So do that about 10 times on your own. You don't even need a partner for this one. This one's actually pretty easy to drill on your own, just to kind of work on the movement. So I lean forward, the shoulders turn, the arm that's back swims through one at a time. Because when I'm square, the person has more surface area. I wanted to negate the surface area to make it easier to swim through. So I'm not trying to push the arms apart. I'm trying to swim between them. So lean forward, shoulder back, swim through the arms. So this is maintain the mount, swimming through the arms. The next thing that a lot of people who either first start Jiu-Jitsu or don't know Jiu-Jitsu try to do is they try to push your knees off. There's something about upper body strength that, especially if you're a big guy, you're like, I can push anyone off. It's not natural. If there was something natural about Jiu-Jitsu, then all of us as adults would know it. The only people who Jiu-Jitsu is natural for is children. So, and animals. Okay, I found that. My dog shrimps. So when the person starts to push on our knee, instead of fighting it here, this creates a frame for them and gives them the ability again to shrimp out. So instead of like resisting, we're going to flow with the go. So when I base and the person is pushing on my leg, I'm going to drop my hip down and bring my toes up, just like we did in our warm-up, okay, bringing our hips in. Now I'm going to make a hook. When I hook, I'm going to do 5 fingers. So thumb with the fingers, I'm going to lift it straight up. Once I lift straight up, I'm going to crawl forward to slide my knee up and then base. So remember, we want to go all the way up or all the way down. They push on my knee, I lift, crawl up, and then base. Again, they push my leg, I make a hook, so I go with it. I lift. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to crawl my knee up. So now I'm in high mount, base again. Lift, base again. So this is pulling the hands off of the knees. Okay? So that's why I love the way things are named in Jiu-Jitsu. We have maintain the mount, swimming through the arms. Maintain the mount, pulling the hands off the knees. Okay? So those are our 2 major ones. The last one is actually my personal favorite. I still use it to this day, probably more than anything. So it's very natural, I think, for people to want to turn to their side or try to, if they don't know Jiu-Jitsu. But also people who know Jiu-Jitsu try to shrimp out. And when people try to do that, the best way to stop them from doing that is disrupting their spine. And the easiest way to disrupt their spine is by controlling their head. And I actually learned this more from Thai boxing. Because in Thai boxing, we have this kind of plumb. And once you control the head, the spine has to follow, unless they want their neck to break. So if you control the head, you can control the spine. Okay? So what we're going to do, and I'll turn the angle a little bit, is when someone starts to turn to their side, they have to look in that direction. Their head can't go the opposite direction. So if I'm basing here and they want to shrimp to their side, all I have to do is take their head where it's not supposed to be. Okay? And there's lots of ways to do it. I will show you the way I do it. There's other variations. So what I like to do is I like to go to the tip of the head. So I'm moving the head like this and like this. And the reason I do that is at the tip of the head, people's necks are strong in this range of motion. And I've seen it. Like Thai boxers sometimes will just like grab stuff in their teeth and sets like this. But people's necks are not very strong in this range of motion because now you're using like SCMs, scalings. These things get strained very easily. So when someone starts to turn their head, I'm going to base and I'm going to turn their head in the direction it doesn't want to go. Now they have to change direction. So now if they want to turn the other way, and take their head in the direction it doesn't want to go. So it's very similar to that stretch we did in the beginning where we're kind of stacking the hands on top of each other. Here and here. And like I said, I try to focus on turning the person's head like this and this. The other one that you can do is if the person starts to try to crawl the hand underneath and then extend your arm. That's another option to kind of pull the head in the direction it's not supposed to go. So if the person turns this way, I'm going to stick my arm underneath. I walk it with our magic jiu-jitsu fingers and extend the arm to take their head in the direction it's not supposed to go. So this is maintaining the mount, pushing the opponent's head. And again, you're just pushing in the direction it doesn't want to go, so the spine is disrupted. And everyone's spine is just, once someone's spine is disrupted, no one is strong. I've never seen someone max out a deadlift with their head out of alignment. It doesn't work. If something breaks down in the chain, you take away the person's strength, and that's the goal. So these are our 3 ways to maintain the mount position. Really simple. So we have swimming through the arms, pulling our opponent's hands off the knees, and pushing our opponent's head. Okay? Okay, I have a great question. So for the knee push, would you still lift your leg and lift your toes if you cannot hook their legs with your foot? I.e. their leg is flat. Okay, so probably not. If their leg is flat, I probably wouldn't hook. I probably just kind of pull it off. And again, maybe you don't grab the elbow or the wrist. Maybe you just kind of grab whatever you can and then just lift it up. I do this usually if someone's like really aggressive, like they're trying to take me off like a pair of pants. Now, if the person is framing and trying to shrimp and their leg is flat and they're trying to like dig their leg underneath mine to shrimp, this is a lot of times when I move into like the Pedro Sauer mount. So that's a really good question. So the Pedro Sauer mount is going to be like this, where I kind of offset a little bit. So I'm kind of making a frog foot here instead. And then if someone starts kind of pushing my knee here, I keep this heel tight, but I let this be relaxed. So if someone's pushing my leg like this, then I can stop them from kind of digging their leg underneath my heel. And if someone's pushing my knee, then I can collapse this on top of it. And that's usually what I do. So this is more of our Pedro Sauer mount, where I'm kind of offset versus square with the person. And this is a type of mount that I use a lot. We call it the Pedro Sauer mount in my school because Master Sauer has shown it to me over the last 12 years, and I still use it to this day. But if the person is flat and they're like kind of pushing my leg, I won't make a hook there. Maybe I just make a frog foot instead, and then lift and slide up. Those are kind of different options. So it really just depends on what my opponent's trying to do, because a lot of mount is just guard reversed. So anyone who's done open guard knows you have to constantly adjust depending on what your opponent does. And you have to do the same thing in mount if you would like to maintain. You can't just hold a person down in mount. It's not like crossbody where you're trying to put this blanket of pressure. The idea behind mount, which is very difficult for most people, is that the idea is I want to stay on top, but let my opponent move. So stay on top, but let my opponent move. And that's a difficult concept. And you got to kind of just play with it. But I hope that answered your question sufficiently. So thank you for the questions. I love input. Are there any other questions about maintaining the mount position? This is actually one of my favorite things to teach when I do seminars. It's one of my most popular seminars that I teach is teaching just mount maintenance. A lot of times I barely even get to submissions sometimes because there's just so many little nuances to maintaining the mount. This is just 3 really simple kind of basics you can kind of put in your game right away. But that was a really great question. Are there any more questions about maintaining mount? If not, we're going to, awesome, I'm glad it helped out. If there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and start moving into our move of the day, which is our collar choke, and talking about some nuances about that. Oh, good questions. Is there any way to prevent them pushing your knees besides the Pedro Sauer way? You mean besides the Pedro Sauer mount? I mean, you can, but I personally always have done the Pedro Sauer mount. Like, that's what I've always done. I still do it to this day. But, like, the Pedro Sauer mount is not what everyone thinks it is. There's a couple different things. It depends on how the person's pushing your knees. If they're pushing you like they're trying to take you off like a pair of pants, or they're just framing really hard, those are 2 different things. So what the reason I want to talk about, I just did a private lesson on Zoom about this whole concept. So when I'm doing the Pedro Sauer mount, my goal is to be up or down, not in the middle. When you're in this middle zone, it's very difficult to maintain mount in my experience for me. There's some things that Hickson does that are really, really cool. but this is just the way I do it. Okay, so what I like to do is put my hands on the mat, and again, I use my hands to push my hips back. So almost like my tailbone is sitting on the person's leg, or a femur, Master Sauer's favorite word. And then I have this frog foot here to kind of dig. So even if someone's pushing my leg here, and they're trying to shrimp out, especially if they turn this way, then I just go to technical mount. If the person starts to try to turn the other way, especially if I have a hand on the collar, they're giving me the collar choke. And then I'll usually pin here and then push their head and then put them back flat. If they try to bridge, then I just slide up them like I'm basically like they're a ramp. So the best way to stop someone from pushing your knees is honestly just dropping your hips down and almost like kind of the non-Pedro side, dropping your hips down and pulling the hands up. That would be the easiest, but in my experience, because I roll almost exclusively with larger men, usually at least 20 pounds heavier than me, if I overconnect to people, they usually just bridge me off. So I like to float them out. And then once I've floated them out for a couple of minutes, then I'll start taking things away to kind of really isolate myself into like an S mount or a high mount or a mountain triangle position where I feel like I can take my time and really start to work my submissions. So hopefully that answered your question sufficiently. But these are just the ways that I like to hold them out. And like I said, I could do a whole hour just on all the different ways I like to maintain the mount. Like I said, I did a whole Zoom lesson with a wonderful woman from Montana just talking about maintaining mount against larger opponents. So if, there's a lot of different options there. So hopefully that answered your question sufficiently. Awesome. That makes sense. So let's go ahead and if there are no other questions about mount maintenance, and like I said, this could be like a whole separate lesson. Let's talk about the collar choke. So the collar choke is personally one of my favorite submissions. Right after I broke my ribs for the first time, when I was a purple belt, I couldn't do the submissions I usually liked to do, especially from guard, which is like arm bars, triangles, submissions that usually lead to you getting folded up like a sandwich. So I decided I really got to work my collar chokes. And I didn't like them very much until I met Hoyron Gracie, the inventor of the UFC. And he taught, I thought, a really good class on the collar choke. Regardless of anything else, I really enjoyed that. So the biggest mistake that I think most people make with a collar choke is they start too far away from the neck. They put a hand on the collar and then there's a gap. When you stick a hand on the collar, the flat of your wrist should already be next to the neck. You already should be like really tight. Now when I stick the second hand underneath, I want to make sure when I'm doing my 50-50, so there's two types of collar chokes, 50-50 and 80-20. So our 50-50 or our palm up choke is going to be here. Now I'm going to lift and then I'm going to turn my shoulders to get the second hand the collar. So these should already be pretty tight to the neck. Then I square up. So this should already be pretty tight. And I haven't even done anything yet. Because I will tell you guys flat out, I do not have great grip strength. If there is a grip strength contest, I would definitely lose. So this is not grip strength. This is just taking away space. Or as Master Sauer likes to say, we're going to snuggle the neck. So I'm going to grab the back of the gi. I'm going to grab the back of the gi and I roll it straight. So I roll my wrists in. So if these are the flats are already next to the neck and I roll my wrist straight, see, that already takes away all the space. Now, instead of pulling with my arms, I see a lot of guys do this. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want you to really think about setting your shoulders. When I set my shoulders, now I just want to make my chest bigger and my back smaller. Pull with my arms or my elbows. So I really want to focus on pulling with just my back if I can. So when I set my shoulders, I don't want to pull up here at my chest. I want to pull at this third point, okay? This is very important. So if we're doing it on our partner, hand on the collar, this first hand's got to get pretty deep, like thumbs behind the ears. Like that's the way I like to think about it. Not grabbing the tag, but thumbs behind the ears. And then my wrist should be already kind of flat or flush against the neck. Now I'm going to lift the chin. I turn my shoulder. And then the little details, I let go of this collar so I have more material to grab with this one. Now these are already really tight to the neck. Now I square up. Now I'm going to grab the back of the gi. I roll my wrist straight. Okay? Once I roll my wrist straight, now I'm just going to set my shoulders, make my chest bigger and my back smaller. Here. Once I started thinking about setting my shoulders, it made a huge difference. Because when my shoulders are forward like this, I don't have good posture. I want to be here. Okay, that's what we're looking for. For our 80-20 choke, it's slightly different. So for the 80-20 choke, which is my personal favorite, stick a hand on the collar. Now, this is going to reach over the other side on top. It's called 80-20 because the bottom hand is going to do most of the work. I'm going to turn my wrist in. Now, same thing, when I set my shoulders, I'm just going to pull with the bottom hand. This is kind of like a placeholder. It's like a block, and I pull the person into the other arm. And that's our 80-20 choke. So that's your basics of kind of the mechanics of the collar choke. And it's a lot of fine motor skills, so the more you practice it, the easier it's going to be. So now let's talk about it from the mount position specifically. And I'm just going to show 2 basics, and then I'm going to open it up to questions as far as like setups, fail-safes, etc. So first one is our 50-50. So we're going to put a hand on the collar. Make sure, and I like to put my fist on the ground. Again, my forearm is really, and my wrist is really close to the neck already. Now I'm going to lift the shoulder. Now I lift, turn my shoulders. Second hand on the collar. Now my head goes to the hand that's on top. And the idea is I want to twist and lean forward. I lean forward to make my arms heavy. I put my head on the ground, give myself base. Now I turn my wrist and then pull. The reason, and you don't need to pull as much when you're in mount because you have gravity. Yay! I love physics. So you always want to bring your head to the hand that's on top. It's going to kind of close up that third point of pressure. Because to finish a choke, you need pressure and time. So if you're maintaining the position really well, you have the time. Now you just have to create the pressure. And you can do that by making your arms heavier. So that way you're not pulling the opponent up, you're bringing yourself to your opponent, which is a little easier. So one more time. My fist goes in here. Fist is on the neck. Lift the chin. Second hand. Inside. Now, the idea is I want to bring my head towards the hand that's on top, lean forward. Now I'm going to set my shoulders, make my chest bigger, my back smaller. Okay, so that is going to be your 50-50. Now for our 80-20 choke, just stick a hand on the collar. Now because I have to go all the way to this side, we're going to go ahead and base in the process. So base, base, base. Now I'm going to slide this till the pinky is grabbing the wrinkle here. Now I'm going to bring my head to the hand that's on top. Same thing. I'm going to lean forward to make this arm heavy. Now turn my wrist in, set my shoulder, and pull. Okay? And that is going to be our 80-20 choke. I base in transition so I don't lose the position. Okay? And this is just how you do a very fundamental collar choke from the mount position, whether it's here, here, or here, here. Okay? Those are your 2 basics. Okay? And it's really important when you're practicing, if you do have someone to practice with at home, that you really master the collar choke from the knees you're standing first. So you really get the subtlety of what your wrists are doing before you move into the mount position. A lot of people try to do it from mount right away, and then you're missing a lot of the subtlety. Like I said, I used to hate the collar choke because I didn't understand it, and I couldn't get it to work. I felt like without hurting my own wrists. So it's like almost like we got to gooseneck our wrists a little bit. So when I do the collar choke, I'm kind of like this. I'm not here, just straight. I want to really kind of grab the back of the gi and then roll my wrist in. And the more I can roll my wrist in, the stronger this is going to be. Because this isn't a strength move. This is a bony technique move. So the bonier your wrist, the more it's going to suck. Because what we're trying to do is 2 things for the pressure. So Master Sauer always used to tell me, a choke is like a double-barrel shotgun. Okay, and I didn't understand what he meant by that until recently. So what he meant by that is that you're going to feel 2 things with a good collar choke. You're going to feel the blood start to cut off from the brain. You're also going to feel pressure. Now, I didn't understand what he meant by that until it was explained to me. So anyone ever got a tourniquet around their arm when they're giving blood and you feel that it hurts? It's like a lot of pressure. What we're feeling is a spike in blood pressure, except around your neck. So that's what you're doing. You're cutting off blood to the brain, but you're also creating a spike in blood pressure, which is that pressure, which is that kind of ouch pain that you feel as well, which is what makes people usually want to tap. Because sometimes you'll have a hand that's in the collar, the person doesn't want to tap because they don't feel it yet, and then they just go to sleep. So we want to create both. So it's like a double barrel shotgun. So we want to make sure that we're cutting off blood to the brain, which honestly, if you just leave both hands in the collar long enough, if you can hold it, you'll win. What we also want to do is create that pressure, that spike in blood pressure, so make people want to tap. So let me take questions. For the 80-20 choke, what is the minimum angle or distance required for posting hand before you can bring it in for the second grip. So what I like to do is I like to put my elbow on the ground and then kind of slide it up. So that's a good question. So there's two ways I do it. So I like to base, base, base. A lot of times I'll go here and I'll put my elbow on the ground. That way I can kind of put my head on the mat and then just take my time to slide it up. Because if I get my head on the ground, my head can be my other post. This is like your fifth limb in Jiu-Jitsu, and I think a lot of people forget about that. So I want to make sure I have this. This is really important. So now I put my elbow on the ground, and then I slide it up, and then get into my choke position. That's something that works really, really well for me. Another one that I do a lot is I'll lift, and I'll grab underneath the head. And then what I'll do is I'll shave my elbow around the head as I drive my hips up and finish here. So those are the two options that I really like, okay? So it's not that you need a minimum angle. It really also depends on the size of you and the size of your opponent and the size of your limbs. I have a 71-inch reach from fingertip to fingertip, which is a fairly long range for someone who's only 5'8". So I usually can use my limbs pretty well to base, but don't be afraid to use your head to base as well in Jiu-Jitsu. Wrestlers do it all the time. So as long as you're really strengthening your neck, I don't have the strongest neck. I have like a little bird neck for a grappler, but you can use that as well. So what I like to do is after I base to the side, I'll put my elbow on the ground and then I'll put my head, my elbow, and then I'll slide into the position. And that makes it a little bit easier. So you always have a kind of a point of contact on the mat so you don't feel like you lose position. But mind you, once you get that second hand on the collar and they roll you, you still have guard and you still have two hands on the collar. So don't be afraid to lose position as long as you know you have a finishing submission. Especially if you're rolling in the room. Now we're talking about self-defense. It's always a little different. Then my goals are different in self-defense. But as far as in the room, don't be afraid to lose position if you know you have like a finishing tap, like with that choke. So that's just something. There's concern if they roll you halfway. So if the person rolls you halfway and then shrimps out the back door, one, they're very good at jiu-jitsu. Because like an uneducated person is just going to come to the top. But when they roll halfway, that means they know what they're doing. So if you're really concerned about that specifically, then we got to go back to that Pedro Sauer mount. So what I like to do, again, is stick the hand on the collar and then offset right away. Because when I offset right away to this Pedro Sauer mount, they can't bridge me that direction because my weight's here. So I've taken away that immediate kind of thing you need to worry about. Then depending on what they do dictates what I do. So if they turn into me to try to shrimp out, they're giving me the collar choke. And then I just got to keep this tight, and then that's a much easier choke to finish, okay? So that's what I would recommend, is that either you need to grapevine both legs and drive forward on your 80-20 choke, or do it from the Pedro Sauer mount. So what I mean by grapevine is that shave that I was showing here and here, and I apologize, the shave's not as good on Bear Drills because his head is so large. But what I do is that I shave and I drive my hips forward. I'm looking to be here and drive my hips forward, and then all my weight's on my arms and their hips. It's very like Hodger-esque way of finishing the collar choke. So I would do that, or offset to here and finish the choke. So when you're offset here, you don't have to worry as much about them bridging you in the other direction. And this is typically where I like to be in mount. Okay, so I hope that answered your question sufficiently. But that's just what I like to do. And then what's great is if you've taken all the BJJ fundamental classes I've taught over the last like 1.5 months, almost 2 months, I've been doing a lot of mount. So hopefully even if the collar choke fails, you can use it to set up some of the other submissions we've worked on, like the armbar or the Americana or some other things as well. Okay. But I understand what everyone's saying. The UPA is kind of the first move that everyone learns how to defend against. So we have a tendency to take something like the collar choke and be like, I don't know if I can actually finish that. But I think there's a lot of value in it. Don't look at every submission as the finish. Sometimes the submission is like the jab. It's just to see what the person's doing and maybe maintain the position. So if I'm throwing some really good submissions out there, maybe that's just making you not think about escaping. versus if you just stay in mount, sometimes the only thing the person's thinking about is escaping. But if I start attacking the neck and start doing other things, maybe they're not thinking about escaping. Maybe they're thinking about, crap, I got to defend that collar choke. So it's always good to look at, not every submission serves to finish the fight, okay? And as a rule of thumb for me, I don't try to do what I want. I try to do what I can. Sometimes that's not always the right answer. There's a lot of trial and error to figure that out. But this is fundamentals. This is like, how do we do the submissions? When you start getting into more open rank classes or bigger questions, then you get into more like the tactical aspect of jiu-jitsu, where it's like, when do I do this? And that's usually what you're learning when you're going from like blue to purple, when you're like, oh, okay, so how do I start using these moves that I've actually learned? And everyone learns this at a kind of a different rate. But I appreciate all you guys chiming in and asking questions. That really makes it more fun for me too. So I know that this is actually getting through to people. So are there any questions about anything that we did today as far as jiu-jitsu is concerned? And I just want to remind everybody, every Saturday at 11 a.m. is going to be a jiu-jitsu class. And I decided to do jiu-jitsu on weekends when people have like the most free time. And I can do a longer class than maybe in the evening, which I know is sometimes tricky for everybody. So just a reminder of the class schedule that I'm kind of trying to stick to is Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Muay Thai. Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Kids BJJ. So even for my instructors or my adults, maybe it's a great class to watch as far as if you need ideas of different things to do with kids, or like you're going kids at home. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Kali or FMA. So I'm doing Filipino martial arts on that day. Saturdays is always going to be adult jiu-jitsu. And then on Sundays, I'm doing a special philosophy and fighting where I do kind of like more of a talk on, just kind of more theory. Last week, we talked about women in martial arts. This week, we're going to talk about why martial arts is great for kids and kind of to develop kids in general. Because I started doing martial arts at a very young age, and it's really changed me as a person. So I want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Are there any jiu-jitsu or non-jiu-jitsu related questions or self-defense questions or anything I can answer in the next 3 minutes? If not, thank you guys again for tuning in. It was so much fun for me today. Remember to like, subscribe, and share the video. It really helps me out, and hit that thumbs up button. And if you would like to support the channel, I have a link in the comment section for Patreon. My patrons get notes, but also if you donate $5 or $10 a month, you get special videos with a coupon code that I put in there for you guys, including my solo drills and my full black belt test, which is pretty awesome. It's for you guys. So thank you guys so much as always. This is really a pleasure for me because I miss teaching so much in real life that this is the closest I get to it. So this is really a passion project for me. So thank you guys so much for everything. And remember, drillers make killers.